Hi viewers, welcome to my channel. This is Uma Shankar and today I'm going to discuss about the HTTP methods and corresponding HTTP status code. So I'm taking an insurance example, this sample data by using the CRUD operation. When the SQL CRUD operation I will be explaining. For database I'm using the insurance info table, and here is the various columns. Now let me start with the HTTP methods. So we have the post, and the second one going to be like get, third method put or patch, fourth method is a delete. Now when we are going to use the post one, for this to explain that, let me copy some of the data to understand easily manner. So for the REST API standard codes, see this one, the post one is similar in the SQL queries insert query. Whenever user want to insert some data into the database, to store some records into the database, during that use case we'll be using that post method. So I have this data I should insert into the database. So let's take an example now. That data I need to insert it here. While performing a post operation, it's mean that while inserting the data, ID will be unique, that is a primary key. It's going to be generated in the background dynamically. So this is my data, let's say, and then ID would be 11. Now ensure first name is the test first name, the last name would be this data. Let me fill these details into the database. Ensure date of birth, this data in the respective columns of the data will be storing this data. Finally you will be storing this into that ensure email. See, while using the insert query, I have inserted the data into my database successfully with this table. Now after inserting that, whenever we are performing any REST API operation, there is a standard way of defining the response. Okay, to retrieve that has to be in the REST API. There is a standard way that's supposed to be something like this. The response should be in this format only. Now I am giving an example of the only happy use cases, happy path only, success scenarios only. I'm not going to cover all the negative scenarios. Only with the success use cases only I am covering at this moment. So for that response, this is my message. That message, the corresponding type would be created and code would be 201 and description would be resource created successfully. This is a standard way of defining the message for the post one. If they wanted to define the response also, they can define in this place. So response similar. Let me take the another example. So CRUD operation, the second operation would be read, retrieving the data. So let me take that in the standard way. See, this is the retrieving the data. It's fetching the data from the database, retrieving the data from the database. In that use case, we'll be using that get method. So for that as well, get the REST API method as well, there is a standard way of define the message. So that message something, this one message, and that message also having a type, code, description, and coming to the type would be okay, code should be 200, and description should be, we can define something like the resource retrieved successfully. We can define something this. See, now For all the across the industries, only the type and code should be the standard, and the description based on the developer, however they want to use specify the description, they can use it. So this is there is no constant way. Some industries they will be following a different description, some other people they will follow in different way. And the third CRUD operation will be put and patch. What is the difference between the put and patch? Let me take an example with the above use case only. So let me copy the request body I will explain in detail. Now in this request body, whenever I am performing the update operation, it will go into the by using this entity, it will go into the database. See, it will go into the database, it will replace the data in the database. Entire entity will be replaced in the database. It means that in another way that entire record will be replaced. For example, I want to change my phone number to 33. Now this data, even though we are changing the insured phone number only, what it is going to do by using the put, it will replace the entire data into the database. So it will recreate the version. So it means that it will replace the entire data. But whereas whenever we are using with the patch, what it does, it will be going to update the data into the partially. It's the only partially update. It means that patch, I will take the patch here. So in this use case, what will happen, I will be taking this information, same request body, but I'm not going to change the entire data. I will be passing only required phone number only. I want to update only this information. I don't want to change all the other field. So this will be treated as a partially update in my database. So that phone number will be updating to with the latest what you are expecting. That data will be updating the database. That is the only difference. Now coming to the REST API standard response display. Okay, so how we are going to display, let me copy that data information. How does it looks like? This one. For post and for put and patch, we will be using the same response status code only. There is no any difference. And when we are going to use the get, when we are going to use that accepted, when we are going to use that no content. So there is a way of for each type and codes, accordingly we'll be using that. So there is a use case. Let's take a use case of A when we are going to use that OK. So in this use case we will be displaying the OK with the type code. Let's take a code only 200 in this use case. Now let me take example with the same above example. This is my code, right? A response. Now I will be defining the JSON and fields here, and then here my data, my response has to be written. Whatever I am updating this information, whatever I am updating this information, this has to be written as part of my response. During that time I'll be using something like this. So let me copy this data. Here response, so that corresponding data would be like this. So I think this is no longer required as per the bracket. See, now whenever I'm using 200, that use case I'll be using something to type equals to OK, and then code should be 200. So here resource updated successfully, so something like this. So when we are going to use that accepted, for accept use case, the request has been accepted for processing, but the processing has not been completed. This means that request successfully accepted, but that particular request, that is still, it's taking some more time to process to complete that entire. During that use case only will be using the accepted. So I do not have any example at this moment to explain that use case. So there is another use case, no content. The consumer, so this is the second one, so let's define as a B. The consumer, they don't want to return the response, no content. They don't want to return the updated. Whenever you perform the operation, whenever you perform the update, put or patch, right? During that time, user, they don't want to display this response. So in that use case, people are using no content. Type should be no content, and the status code should be 204. They don't want to display the JSON response. They don't want to display the JSON response as part of the response body. So during that time, they should go with the 204, with the type should be no content. This is the standard way of following the REST API JSON structure. There is another one, finally, delete. This is straightforward. Let me take that standard way. This is a similar to delete command from the SQL perspective. So delete command, so just me straightforward delete command, right? Now for that response structure should be, I want to delete this data from the database, so I don't want this. So during that use case, we'll be using the HTTP method is the delete, and after using that, you wanted to return the response as part of the response body. Thus response structure should be something like this: message, and type should be OK, and code should be 200, description should be record deleted successfully, something like this. This is a way of displaying the standard way. But there is another two HTTP methods. Those are head patch, sorry, options. These we are not going to discussing in detail. So these are people not using widely, so I'm not discussing that now. So there is another for HTTP methods specification, like we could say it idempotent safe, but we are not discussing at this moment now. We can discuss in further future videos. Thank you for watching.